Hey, it's Ori, and today we are talking to Rachael Singer, who is a dance movement therapist who works with children on the autism spectrum. And it wasn't until she really brought it to my attention, but we haven't had many episodes focused on children, especially with autism. So I'm excited to share this with you. If you have clients who have autism, if you have family members, there's some real juicy, practical guidance in here. And I just love the core message that she ends at the end of our conversation, too. So let's get into it. This is Mind Your Body, a dance movement therapy perspective on the integration of our emotional, cognitive, physical, and spiritual aspects of our being into one more aware and whole existence. Okay. All right. Welcome, Rachael Singer, to the podcast. So good to have you here. And I'd love for you to introduce yourself a little bit about what you do and why you're here today.
Hi, Ori. Thank you so much for having me. So I am Rachael Singer. I live in Los Angeles, and I grew up in Burbank, California, and grew up with the arts my whole life, and started teaching kids for a long time in preschool, and decided to pursue dance therapy to work with kids with neuro differences and special needs. And so that's what I do now is I work for a nonprofit company where I integrate dance therapy and DIR Floortime Therapy with children with autism. And I do a lot of other stuff too.
Can you talk a little bit more about the kids that you're working with? What kinds of things do you see? Like what kinds of behaviors or like physical presentation you see when they start working with you? And what are the kinds of things that you help them work through?
Yeah, so I also want to just share what DIR Floortime Therapy is too before I even say that part, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So DIR stands for Developmental Individual Differences and Relationship. So it's basically looking at the whole child, where they're at in that moment, and where they at developmentally and in their body and in their brain, and to then join them in that place and then take them once they're kind of, you build that relationship piece, and that why it's called floor time is you're on the floor with them or doing whatever it is that the child is interested in, and then you take them to the next level of development. So I see dance therapy and DIR floor time such a beautiful blend because it's really looking at who the person is, you're joining them, but having the movement aspect to this work takes it to another level because I'm really aware of where the body is holding tension, what are ways to release that, what are ways to connect through mirroring and different techniques that as dance therapists, we just have a little bit more gold to kind of share and spread with it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Developmentally, do you follow a specific theoretical approach with the developmental stages?
Somewhat. So floor time therapy has like the pyramid of triangle. So it's always, it's at regulation is the first level, the different levels. They're called FEDLs. I forget what that stands for at this moment, but it's basically, it's really looking at like, is that child regulated? And then you keep moving up into development. So it's almost, you can look at an infant and see all of that right there. And then where maybe a child, if you're working with an 11-year-old, in which what I do, she in some ways is at a 3-year-old mark as far as social relatedness. And so then it's just about meeting her where she's at in that place and taking it up to level 4. Say that's,
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. So the developmental framework is, Stanley Greenspan and Serena Wieder created this triangle. So that's where I guess that's where I would say the framework is.
Gotcha. So yeah, in terms of like presenting behaviors and issues, what do you usually see in the kids that you work with?
So I see, it depends each time and it depends each person, but their body is usually, I'm going to talk about one client in particular. So she's 11 years old, and when I see her and she's dysregulated, she's not able to have back and forth conversation. So she'll be kind of self-murmuring, self-talking to herself. It's not easy to hear and understand. She might be rocking back and forth. There's a lot of tenseness and rigidity in her body muscle and her tone, and not a lot of eye contact. And then I also see like a lot of movement sometimes too when she's highly anxious or irritated outside. She'll bolt and she'll run and go into fight or flight mode. And that's also a way that she relates to people too. Like, I mean, it's a way to get away and not relate to people, but we also use that in our work to play. So we use tag and running away from mommy to give her that feeling, but also use it in a positive way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's, yeah.
Cool. And then, so like what's an example of what else you would do? So you're incorporating the play to help her be in this activated state, yet in a non-fear way. It's like mobilizing without the fear. And how does that help her relationship with her mom, whether it's her or just generally the kids that you're working with?
Yeah, it definitely gives the parents a little bit more tools when the child is in that fight or flight state, and when they're outside, just going to the store or going to Target or going to the mall. It's not an easy experience. And so we've learned a couple of things about her. One, she really does well with a plan and visually seeing something, so we write it down, or we draw, or she'll draw what she wants to say, or she'll pick a time that she'll go to. So a verbal visual agreement has supported her and helped the mom know what to do in those stressful moments. And then also, giving this play and helping mom see that she needs that movement, and she also needs that ability to feel independent and not be told what she has to do, and find some freedom within a very safe environment and therapeutic. So that's, I think, helped help mom and her just be calmer and more joyful together in moments, and giving mom more tools and understanding like why she goes into that state, and that it's not it is behavioral, but it's not out of, I'm going to do this like in a conniving way, which is easy to see, right? It's not intentional. And some parts are, but that's her actually using more logic and more problem solving. There are times when we've gone outside, gone on a walk, and she wants it to be her way and say, I want to go the way that I want to go. And mom also says, yeah, but I want to say where I want to go too on this hike. So I help support them in compromising that, and through movement kind of saying like, well, to the child, we can go this way, but how about we run when we're doing that way, or we hop, or we giving some choice in how we move to that place, allows her to find some empowerment and more sense of self, and
yeah,
and a lot.
a
lot comes
sounds like
from that.
You're really meeting her where she's at neurophysiologically as well, which is right. It's not just a behavior. I used to work in a therapeutic preschool where like that was a lot of the reaction. I was debating whether to say response or reaction, but it was like a lot of reaction. Or it was like, oh, they're just being oppositional, or they're just being defiant, like, and it was almost easier to see it that way, or it was just a lot of their transference or countertransference coming in from the way that they were being seen as a kid, and they were more intolerant of rules or whatever, so you have to manage a lot of that.
Yes. Yeah. And somebody that I love, if you guys all want to check out, is Mona Delahook. And she just came out with a book called Beyond Behaviors. And she talks a lot about this exact thing, and that we quickly go to a labeling children as defiant. And it's really, well, what's going on in their body and their mind, and then how to support them. We don't want children to feel like they have to have a time out when they're figuring something out and they're frustrated, or they're lacking that resource. We get to be their executive brain and support them in that stressful moment and say, yeah, we're here with you, we're going to connect to you, and then explain and redirect and support them in achieving that in a different way. Not necessarily better or right or wrong, but yeah. And I find that movement allows more options and more variation to occur, which then helps with the brain and the rewiring of that. So by adding in little ways where I'm meeting my client where she's at, she loves monkey bars, and she could be at monkey bars for all day. She'll say, I'll stay here all night. And so her body is really needing that. And she'll say, I didn't get them at school today. I need to do them today. And mom kind of gets overwhelmed by that. And it's like, oh, but we need to get her away from the monkey bars. And so what we, as the therapists, have done is allow her to do the monkey bars, but we add in a ball, so we provide the ball in between her legs while she's climbing the monkey bars. So there's more something she has to do with her thighs to also provide more muscle tone and physicality, and having her to think and balance that aspect. And it's just adding in variation and playfulness. And then we'll have, she'll go around the monkey bars a couple times or once, and then throw the ball to mom, and mom has to run and get it and then throw it back to her. Mm-hmm. And then she'll throw one to me and throw it back. And so there's a lot of wanting to integrate this back and forth communication through playing ball and through dance and movement. Then it kind of comes out into language and I see it. Her language has improved, her interest in playing with other people has improved, as long as she knows like what she needs to do to be able to be amongst others.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah,
I see a lot of dance movement therapy is layering. Actually, like that's what my supervisor, Christina Devereaux, always used to tell me, is like layering, and instead of kind of like separate processes. And I see you layering those different options and ways of being with the monkey bar. So it's like you don't take them away and create something separate. You can just layer on top.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And then the child feels seen and respected and heard, and their interest is there, but you're also supporting them in what they need to, or in what could add a layer. I like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So do you always work with the parent, with the child?
No, not always. That's the main majority of the work. But last week, she actually went to spring break camp at a recreation center. So I joined her as her one-on-one. And I've been a child's one-on-one before as well, at school in a preschool setting. And that's really interesting because one, like I shared before, I taught in preschools for 9 years, and they're all were play-based, this philosophy Reggio Emilia inspired preschool, which is all about using natural materials and viewing play as the main portion of the day, and also all about social emotional learning and using the arts. So they're anyway, so I've done both. And that's been an interesting experience because I'm not necessarily really doing therapy, but I am, because I'm their playmate, and I get to teach the other kids how to play with them and how to support them in playing with the kids and bridging that gap. And it usually happens through some type of movement.
Yeah.
Through some nonverbal expression or communication or ball or dance or art. There's some type of creativity that I think is the way to kind of connect, them, especially because in children with autism, as many know, language is a huge deficit. So nonverbal communication is their default, and it's our default. But as typical people and people with brains, we forget that piece. So I think that coming back to the body is always a way to really integrate and connect the kids with autism and kids without.
Yeah. Yeah. And humans in general.
And exactly. And animals.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And humans in general.
Yeah, the question that's coming to me is, for anyone listening who also works with children or people with neuro differences, or maybe have kids with special needs, what's your most common piece of advice that you find giving to parents or people, like other treatment team members? Is it that nonverbal communication, or is there something else that you find yourself repeating a lot to help others?
That's a really good question. I think, I would say that the biggest thing is checking in with yourself as the caregiver, and as in any way or the mom or the parent or the dad, is knowing how to connect to your own breath, and not knowing, just doing, and really intentionally connecting to your breath and to your body and to your feet on the ground and into where you are in space. Because once you can do that, you can then be in a relationship fully with somebody else. It's like we say, you have to put on your own mask before someone else's. So I think that's the biggest key, and knowing when to take space and ask for what you need, and make sure to, in your own time, do something for yourself as self-care, because it can be draining, and it can take a lot out of your own body and mind to be fully present with a child with anybody, but with a child that does have challenges, you get countertransference, kinesthetic empathy, and it can really weigh a toll on your body. So I think, and then that affects the children and the people you're working with. So you have to take care of yourself first and foremost, and in the moment when you're with them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like a big thing that you were talking about earlier is co-regulation. It's like if we're not calm and regulated, if we're getting really reactive or on edge, they're going to feel that, and they're going to have, their nervous systems are going to become dysregulated much easier too. So it's like, if we're not regulated, then how do we expect them to be? It's all, that calm, that learning new behaviors and expanding our comfort zone, our window of tolerance. It's all co-created.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And learning our own sensory profile and how the senses affect us, and that might even be playing a role in, you might feel like you're calm and fine with your child out in a crowded playground, but all of a sudden you're realizing you're getting anxious and your heart's beating faster. It might be the loud noises of the kids, or it might be you're cold or hot or something sensory related. And I think that's something I've learned from my clients as well, is the sensitivity to our environment and how to stay regulated, or how to become regulated when you can't control your external environment.
Yeah, I love that. It's not something that I think about in that way. Like, what are my sensory limits or boundaries? That's cool.
Yeah. I led a workshop at the Expressive Art Therapy Summit in November. No, March or April. March. Whatever it was. Yeah, same thing. And and it was on this subject of integrating DIR floor time with dance therapy. And so we looked at our own DIR. And so for the development piece, what is something as an adult that you've had to overcome and work through and move up, move through it, and what do you need to do that, right? And so we kind of talked about our own experiences and challenges, and then the individual differences is what we're talking about here, is the sensory profile, and anything that you have to kind of make changes in yourself or in your environment for you to relate, to be around other people. And then the R is looking almost at like extrovert or introverted, or do you recharge by being around a lot of people, or do you need more space? And how do you ask for that without being like, I need this, or seem like you're antisocial. Or I have a wife who's an introvert and I'm very extroverted, so we're always balancing that act. So I think that that's a key piece too in working with caregivers for that advice, is also knowing what do you need as far as this. And then once you become aware of it, it will shift it automatically, just because you are, oh, that's how I am. Okay, that's why I'm upset with my 4-year-old, or whatever it is.
Yeah. Oh gosh, it's so important for even, like you were saying, like for relationships.
Yes.
For just us being, as individuals, to know all of that. Yeah. And to really respect that too, and not judge ourselves for being different than someone else, or like I take space on my own. Like that's how I recharge. I need a little bit more alone time, quiet time. But I look at people who are just so, out there and kind of opposite. I mean, I can switch back and forth a little bit, but I'm like, that looks really great. I want to be more like that. But it's, it's respecting also where you're at,
Yep.
accepting, respecting and accepting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And knowing that when you do what you need to do, you are able to be more present and full with the other people, or be a better therapist, or whatever it is that we do as jobs. Be a better human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're coming up on the end here, and I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about your business. You shared with me that you have a business.
Yeah. So my business is called Rachel's Moving Hearts, with the ARTS capitalized. So really focusing on using the arts to move with people. And I started it in 2015 when I was living in New York. Found a spiritual community through in the city, and they kind of helped me create a business and really set an intention of what I wanted more of in my life. And so this has been something I've always thought of. So what I do, it changes, and it's always going to shift, but it started as the idea of working with children and moms, or really parents, and building that relationship through dance and movement. And now I have clients where I work at their home with the kid and using dance to support them in their emotional and physical and behavioral challenges and mental well-being. And then I also lead groups for elderly in Beverly Hills using dance and movement. And I work with kids with special needs as group and lead groups for that. And I also work one-on-one in schools with my own business. So it's actually, yeah, so it's right now really not moms and kids and families. It's more children, elderly, but it's all under the same umbrella. Really supporting people expressing themselves through dance and through the arts. And I use meditation like all the time too. So yeah.
Awesome. That's so cool. Do you have a website that we'll be able to look up?
Yes, it's www.rachelsmovinghearts.com, and it's Rachael, Rachael. And yeah, and I have a Facebook and Twitter and a YouTube channel as well that I sometimes lead movement online, and hopefully I'll do more of that too.
Yeah, we'll leave the links for all of that in the show notes, so y'all can click and follow. Sounds amazing.
Thank you so much, Arit, for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom.